The smartest people I know are the most confused, and that's exactly what makes them brilliant. Because confusion in its truest form is actually not the failure of intellect, it's not a sign of mental insufficiency. Instead, it is a refusal for the soul to be deceived by simple answers. And many times when we are confused, we don't recognize this. We don't see that it is our brilliance that is bringing that complexity for us to untangle. Not necessarily for us to find the easiest answer, not necessarily for us to latch on to the next thing that seems right or to choose between this and that, but for us to be able to find better questions so that we can, get to the core and to the root of the truth that is actually necessary for our next level. Your confusion isn't a bug in your thinking. It's not a problem within your software or your design. It's actually a feature. It's a necessity for who we are as humans because we are being beings. What separates us from animals is our ability for awareness to even be able to recognize confusion in the first place. And the interesting thing is, most people have disabled this feature, or to be fair, do this on a case by case basis. We've traded confusion for convenience, for coherence, for the shallow comfort of borrowed brilliance, for the safety in what seems fair, but not necessary. From a young age, we've been conditioned to fear confusion. We've learned to find clarity only within the limits of the confusion of others. So, in an examination, for example, the answer is either A, B, C, or D, and so we think life should also be a multi-choice question, and you are applauded, you're rewarded for getting the answers right, right? Even when you're giving theoretical questions, you find that the teacher only expects you to think within the frame that they've provided and not necessarily what else is possible. And the thing is, this becomes addictive, it becomes conditioning. You learn to think in black or white without gray areas. You learn to think in this or that. You are not taught that life isn't black and white or black or white. It could be black and white. It is nuanced, it is layered. And the way to fully live and function at the highest level isn't by picking between A, B, C, or D, but by learning to sit, within the discomfort of not knowing which question even matters yet. You are not taught that ambiguity can be beautiful, that real insight often comes not from choosing between two options, but from realizing that the entire frame could have been too small to begin with. Now, sometime this year, I was in a conversation with a client, and at some point, he said something along the lines of, this was what God told me. And my response in framing the question I was going to ask him was, weren't you expecting God to speak? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, then, what were you asking and why? Because the actual question is, what are the God's the God you claim to hear? What's the structure upon which your interpretation of whatever God is saying to you is really built on? Because confusion is often not a lack of clarity, but a lack of honest curiosity. It is a signal that you are standing on the edge of something real, on something larger, right? Of something true, of something next level. It is that truth waits beyond the limits of what you know and what you thought you understood. It's really your inner wisdom. It's really your inner wisdom recognizing that the surface level explanations you've been given aren't sufficient for the complexity of your actual experience. Now think about it. When you're truly confused, maybe you come into a threshold moment in your life and it's like, okay, I don't know what path to take. You will find that what you're essentially saying is that the frameworks that have been handed don't account for what I'm actually seeing and feeling. And that's not intellectual weakness. That's not mental failure or insufficiency. That's intellectual honesty. That's a sense of wonder that is hidden within your desire to know, what next or what's right. That's your consciousness refusing to be satisfied with explanations that do not match the texture of your lived reality and the significance of your next level. And so when you get to an inflection point or a threshold moment where you can sense that it isn't this and it's quite not that, or maybe it's this or maybe it's not. It's really your soul's way of guiding you to question the very frame of your current investigative attempt, because sometimes the question you're asking is shaped more by fear than by truth, is defined more by what you do not want to receive answers for than what you are actually seeking questions to. So, for example, what should I do with my life might actually mean what can I do that what can I do that won't disappoint everyone? What can I do that will not make me seen as a failure? What can I do that will take me out of the conventional path that I had led people to believe that this was my calling, this was my area of function, right? Or how do I find my passion? Might actually mean how do I recognize what is necessary for me to build now? Or what if what I have spent years building is actually has actually expired, has actually come to its end. Right now, you might be sitting with questions that feels too big, too complex, or too urgent to remain unanswered. You might be frustrated with yourself for not knowing what comes next. You might feel like the whole world is spiraling around you, or maybe you're feeling, for not having the clarity that everyone else seems to possess. You might even be exhausted because you've been searching for the right answer, the perfect solution, the clear path forward. You just want to get it right. Here's what I want you to know. Your confusion isn't evidence that you're behind, you're broken, you're failing, or what you're seeking is out of reach. Not necessarily. Your confusion is simply your consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of what you thought you know, beyond the boundaries of what you believed, beyond the boundaries and the structures of your current frameworks and your current way of thinking and being. So you want to sit with the confusion that you're experiencing and find out what questions could you possibly be avoiding? What could be the real questions that you need to answer? What are you neglecting? What are you resisting? Right? What are you resisting? What is burning to come out of you in this season that you're simply, wrestling with? And maybe if you can sit into that internal turmoil long enough to see that confusion for what it truly is, you'll be able to ask yourself the right questions. Because really, clarity is not necessarily about getting the right answers. It's about asking yourself the questions that matter and asking yourself better questions that can hand you the framework, the insight, and the system for you to pilot your next level. If you feel like you need more help to navigate a critical inflection point right now and you would love to hop on a breakthrough call with me, then you want to send me a direct message on Instagram or use the link that is displayed on your screen to book a